Afternoon. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. Well, because it is the first one after lunch, I think it's important. Let's just take a minute to arrive, a moment to breathe in, out. Your full awareness here. I have a question. As mindfulness practitioners, teachers, researchers, have you ever walked into a room and had somebody go, "Oh, you're a little woo-woo"? "Oh, I'm not so sure about this mindfulness stuff"? I've had that question happen enough times that, yeah, I know, isn't this cool? It's like, they're bringing me, I think, a backup mic. So there's one thing we all have in common here, and that is our passion for this industry. And our passion for the industry is so strong, we're making the microphones go out. Isn't that exciting? So I'm here today to kind of share with you my passion for this work and a little bit of a field study that I did. And it starts out with, really, passion led us here. So what are those steps that we're going to take from here to continue to move this industry and this work going forward? So I want to invite us to shift the aperture a little bit. Some of us are so focused on our clients out there that for this next 20 or 25 minutes, I want us to take the opportunity to think about how are we going to take care of ourselves as we grow an industry. So lean into your passion for a few minutes. As I ask you this question, what if mindfulness was a recognized profession? Take a moment to breathe into that. What would that look like? What would that feel like? And what would that sound like? What if mindfulness had a seat at the C-suite table in most companies? How would your work be different if perhaps even you were that person, Chief Mindfulness Officer on your business card? Just by way of sharing a little bit about me. Hello, my name is Holly Duckworth, and I got a whole lot of letters after my name. But all of those letters I present to you in service to you. CMP, Certified Meeting Professional. My passion for meeting an event, for mindfulness, comes out of the most stressed out industries. I went running from that industry thinking that you people are crazy working 24/7. Little did I know that I've now, in my for-profit company, been named one of the foremost insight people bringing mindfulness to meetings and events. I'm going to have to give up and go on to this one. Okay, so CMP, Certified Meeting Professional, CAE, Certified Association Executive. When Mo introduced us yesterday, we were talking about how we each bring unique lenses with us to mindfulness as a leader. Associations, things like the American Dental Association or the Institute for Architects. All of the trade groups that you think about, many of them are headquartered right here in DC. Early in my career, I worked with Meeting Professionals International, running 15 of their organizations in the Western US. And then, of course, those last four letters that mean so much to me, Certified Workplace Mindfulness Facilitator. And thank you to Mo and the team that have worked so hard to create that program. So I put all of those letters in a blender, and I asked the question that Rich Fernandez was inviting us to in his earlier session. How can I serve? How can I serve? And I started to explore new thoughts around what mindfulness is and what it can be, having worked so hard to attain those designations and represent industries. When I started out as a meeting planner, my dad couldn't get there. He said, "My daughter is a party planner." When I started out as an association executive, my dad's like, "I don't know, she does some stuff with some people." And then mindfulness, he couldn't even get there. And I'm sure that some of you have had that experience. Now I want to take all of that around mindfulness and create a profession around it. And I want to invite you with me on the exploration that I did. It's a little bit of a soft field study, and I'm going to share with you the preliminary findings and some of my thoughts on what we can do in 2023 as a pilot to advance the professionalism and ethics of the work that we do. So my field study began with my CWMF pod. Raise your hand if you're in a pod. Tell me how much you love your pod. We were pod 8. Pod 8 is great. And my pod member here is sitting in the front, and some of them will be watching online as well. And I started saying to them, you guys, here's what I see. And they said, Holly, you're onto something. And that took me down the road of 150 podcasts. Perhaps you've even come across my show. It's called the Everyday Mindfulness Show, where I interviewed the top researchers, many practitioners in the room, and corporations that were exploring mindfulness, the good, the bad, the interesting, where are we going, many of the authors in that work. And I started to get a little bit more clear that we need a pathway to professionalism. When I approached Mo about providing this conversation here at Mindful Leader, I decided to dig a little bit deeper even more and stepped into doing 6 in-depth interviews with some of the 4 fathers and sadly the 4 women of mindfulness. And I embarked upon asking them some questions that had been burning in my curiosity. These had to be bold questions. Yesterday in the unsession, we did 16 rounds of questions, everything from what is mindfulness in education to what is mindfulness in government. But I wanted to turn those questions inward and ask about who we are for us, by us, to create the future careers that we want to have. So my questions went something like this. What's keeping you up at night about mindfulness as a business leader? Where do you see the future of mindfulness in the workplace, in business, going? Where do you see mindfulness's greatest opportunities? And once I did all of the interviews, I collated all that information, and I worked actually with my pod and with some of my colleagues to say, what are the key themes that are keeping people up at night, that are stressing us out as we look to advance this work? And there was 4 key themes. Perhaps these are things you've asked yourself as well. There's no one agreed upon definition of mindfulness. Come on, people, can we just get one definition? As I've shared my ideas with folks, is mindfulness new thought, ancient wisdom? Is it neuroscience? Is it positive psychology? The good news about mindfulness is no one definition allows us to adapt it to whatever. The bad news about mindfulness is no one definition sometimes doesn't give us the credibility that we need to sell our services into corporate, into government, and into nonprofits. So I'd like to continue to explore that. And as we learned earlier today, sometimes critical thinking brings controversy. So I know I might be throwing out some scratchy stuff there for people, some uncomfortable thoughts. But we need one agreed upon definition of mindfulness, and across the board, that was one of the themes in these interviews. The next theme I saw was, is mindfulness even an industry? And I believe that mindfulness is an industry. We're transforming hearts and minds and creating change. Yeah, we may not be cutting down trees and making plywood, but yet there is still elements of an industry that are present in the work that we do. The next key theme was, and this has been over the last 5 years as I've watched this industry grow from ancient wisdom, movement, to becoming more respected, is competition is rampant. Every single one of those interviews that I did, somebody in that room would say, I can't talk to you because you're my competition. There's not enough business out there for me as a keynote speaker or me as a consultant, so therefore you are my competition and I don't want to talk to you. I'd like us to consider, is it possible we could break down those silos and, in the words of the National Speakers Association, build a bigger pie for all of us, so that when each and every one of us brings our gifts to this industry, we get a bigger slice of it where we can bring our unique gifts, skills, talents, research, and tools. Thank you. So we need a place that we can convene the conveners. And the fourth theme was, of course, certification. Who decides? Who decides the difference between a certificate and a certification? Is it 20 hours online? Is it 240 hours? And when we go and we're selling this into corporate, is there an organization that's verifying the rigorous nature of the work that we're doing, and that it's tied back to neuroscience and not necessarily just spiritual wisdom? We need a place where professionally we can say these programs have been verified by a body such as the American Mindfulness Association. So these four key themes created a journey for me. And, it was a pandemic. I was working from home and from work. And I started thinking about, well, if we're an industry and we're a trade, then we need a professional society. Just like I had come out of Meeting Professionals International. What would it be like to have 100, 500, 1,000 people all coming together to advance the professionalism of mindfulness worldwide? And I started looking around. I'm wondering, is anyone a member of any of these associations? American Massage Therapy Association, American Physical Therapy, perhaps you're an ICF member. So some of you already know the benefits of being part of these associations. It's education, it's networking, and in the case of the organization that I am suggesting, it's also advocacy work. It's time for us to start advocating in our city, state, local governments, national governments on the power of what mindfulness is, so that we can start to disintegrate and dissolve some of the taboos around this topic that we are all so passionate and clear delivers on business objectives. So standards and certifications, it's a little bit of an alphabet soup out there. I mean, you can look after my name, LMNOP, ABC, DEF. Let's look at creating some standards for the standardization of the industry. That can only be done when we bring a collective group of decision makers together to explore what's working, what's not working, what are the business outcomes. And we need to be willing to put a stake in the ground and say, this business objective matches mindfulness, and perhaps this one does not. So that is part of the mindfulness movement. And I hate to say this, and this one is a little controversial, but I believe it's not if regulations will hit our industry, it's when. And by founding and becoming a member of this organization now, we have the opportunity, and I think the responsibility, to get ahead of some of those regulations and actually be in the rooms creating those regulations before they even happen, in advance of having them happen to us. In talking with some of the leaders preparing this field study, they often talked a little bit about the exercise movement. You remember when jazzercise and the leggings? Well, this is just jazzercise. Well, now I looked just in the exercise movement alone. There's over 100 trade associations relating to the exercise movement, all advocating for safety, regulations, business, of how to run an exercise business. Many of you saw that in the massage business. Who's doing that for us? This is a call to action for us to do that for us. My other concern as I was exploring this field study is professionalism and ethics. What are the standards that we are going to hold ourselves to as we grow that bigger pie, as we get out into the world? I love the Calms, the Headspace, the Happier, the Search Inside Yourself Institute, these bigger companies, and they have done a great job trailblazing for us. Now, there's also a lot of mid-size and smaller companies that may not always be as ethical as possible. And again, I get critical thinking. I might be shaking some shoes right now, but how can we be ethical in the work that we do? And by founding an association, we can require members of that association to sign an ethics standard, and we can hold them accountable to the ethics that we create as an industry. And I believe there's some powerful value in that, especially as we continue to evolve and grow, adding to our family here at Mindful Leader. So again, who's watching out for the ethics and giving ourselves the opportunity to write that ethics statement together and hold each other accountable to it? I hope that my field study has helped you expand your awareness of where I see mindfulness is lacking, where I see mindfulness might actually be failing itself, and that some of these questions might inspire you to get involved in growing this as a profession. So now that you know a little bit about my background and you can see and feel my passion, I want to tell you that during the pandemic, on those quiet days when Rich was reading a book, I too was reading a book. Only it was the IRS manual on how to found a 501c6 nonprofit. And I'm happy to tell you it took us over 300 days to get the 501c6 designation, but on some level, the hard work is done, the bylaws, the policies, the procedures, and that very valuable 501c6 designation was granted about 6 months ago. Thank you. So part of my vision here today is to invite you guys to think about what role could you play in creating an association that betters all of us. I wanted to highlight that there is a place for everyone. And again, because competition has come up so much in my work, I wanted to just highlight, here on the left is an example of a conversation we might have at the American Mindfulness Association. Legitimizing the standards, credentialing standards. What if we had an awards program that highlighted the top mindful professionals and mindfulness companies that could someday be featured in, say, something like Forbes or Harvard Business Review? Perhaps we're talking about legal issues, getting that seat in the C-suite. And then I had the opportunity to meet one of the young leaders here in this room, and I was chatting with her, and I said, what would it be like if there was a pathway to the profession? So many of us have knocked on those doors and kind of created our own pathway. The American Mindfulness could be a place to have a conversation about creating a pathway to this as a legitimate profession going forward. But these conversations that we're having in all of these educational institutions are equally important. How are we teaching? What are we teaching? Why are we teaching? How do we teach via technology? So I did want to highlight that there is a place for everyone in this conversation, and this organization isn't being founded as competition. It's being founded as a place for collaboration. So where are we now? We're looking at the 2022-2023 pilot program. We have our 501c6 status. There's a variety of funding sources that are out there, including membership dues and grants. I'm really excited to have people that have that grant writing experience join me in that conversation. I'm currently taking advisory board applications. If this is an area that you would be open to being in a leadership or advisory role in. And I would like to see, for the American Mindfulness Association, that we have 50 state liaisons. If you live in a state and you're interested in being that person, advocating, educating, connecting, inspiring the people of your state about this profession, bring me your card. Let's talk about that. And I know that our friends from Canada are here. We have some friends from Brazil. Just because this was named the American Mindfulness Association does not build a wall around this country. It actually invites us to have international liaisons and international communication. So please feel free to come and explore this conversation with us, even if you are representing a country other than the United States. We would love to have your knowledge and wisdom as well. Mindfulness is a practice of being fully present in the moment. I think there's no moment like the present moment coming out of this pandemic for us to stand up and create a professional organization that represents the work that we do. So I want to invite you to this question. Where will we go from here? How will we channel this passion, this power of the work that we do into the next steps that support us as we do this work in the world? And what if mindfulness, the work that you do, was recognized as a profession? Join me out there in the field, and let's find out. Thank you so much. You are invited. And now I'm open to take some questions. Questions? Yeah. The microphone right there, right by you, is on. If you want to use the mic to ask a question. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Her question is, she's involved in a library of other professional associations, and she wanted to know about education. That's the great part about starting this now, is we have the opportunity to create those educational opportunities. Again, might be monthly meetings, could be quarterly, could be online. We have a committee right now working on potentially having an annual conference in 2023 in our pilot year to come together. That might be in Denver just because it's a great central location. But absolutely, education and networking as a part of this conversation about how do we advance a professionalism. Thank you for the question. Yes? So just so you guys can hear over here, she's expressing the idea that we would have continuing education hours to keep our certifications just like they have in other professional organizations. And that is certainly a great idea and something that we're thinking about. Yes. That's you, yeah.
Me.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Elise, and I applaud everything you're doing and really want to talk to you afterwards. But the question I had is in regards to thinking of it as a separate industry. In some ways takes away from the very thing we're trying to do, which is to integrate mindfulness into every aspect of our society, right? And so unlike the other associations such as physical therapy or whatever it is, in some ways this is all encompassing on the largest possible level in my mind. And so it has to be both and in my perspective. And so I'm just curious what you have to say in that regard.
Thank you for the feedback and the comment. Yes, absolutely, it's a both and. So in the meetings and events industry, we have an organization called the Event Industry Council, where all of the various meeting organizations come together. I see the American Mindfulness Association very similar to that we may be bringing in some of the other organizations as well to partner, collaborate, grow, and advance the professionalism, because we are the best kept secret in a lot of places, and we don't want to be the best kept secret anymore. Yes.
Hi, Alex. I actually didn't know about mindfulness until about Wednesday last night. So
welcome to the party, Alex.
Hi, folks. Anyway, since you'd mentioned this being being known as more of an industry for someone like myself who's very much outside looking in, how could the association kind of pitch, hey, Alex, you should be a part of the association. Here's your roadmap to be someone within the mindfulness space and make it your profession?
Great question. I love it because I intentionally picked this conference to launch this meeting because I believe leadership happens in community and in conversations. And it would have been very easy for me to go into my office and write a business plan and everything out and dictate it from down on high. But we know that's not what mindful leaders do. Mindful leaders bring people into the conversation to build those features and benefits. So I would invite you, as somebody who is new to the industry, to say yes and join in a membership role or in a volunteer role so that you can begin to co-create this with us instead of waiting another year and going, man, I wish I would have. That now is really the time to be an advocate and a leader as we create the profession going forward.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes. No, great question. So she was reflecting back to me that in my presentation I said an association for all. And what I was referencing there is inevitably in an association we would probably have membership categories. And so by all I'm talking about, we would have, corporate learning and development folks. We would have individual practitioners. We would have researchers and invite the universities in. This might be controversial, but again, in the spirit of all, I would see us having the app developers, the technology companies, those partners coming in with us so that we can have the conversations about what do they need and how can we support that need and grow that industry. So from my perspective, again, looking at this through the lens of a 501c6 nonprofit, a business organization, that I want to speak to what the panel was saying, that in order for this to advance in business, oftentimes we do have to gently and lovingly put some of the spiritual nature on the shelf. So it's not necessarily that those folks are excluded, but I believe that those conversations might happen in another forum that may not necessarily happen as it relates to the direct vision and mission of this particular organization. Did that help? Thank you for that question. And I know we're on time. Can I take one more? I'll get yours, David. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for all the hard work you've done. Could you tell me how this organization differs from the International Mindfulness Teachers Association?
I love that question. You're the second one to ask me that in 2 days. First and foremost, International Mindfulness Teachers Association, as I understand it, is for teachers. And this is a little bit broader. I would hope that they will be partnering with us. I haven't yet had the opportunity to have that conversation. I did note that their membership dues are about 5 times what ours are, which is also another conversation. But I think that they should be a part of that again. And we don't have to build the silos around us and compete, but actually build platforms to collaborate, because we know we rely on those teachers to support us in the work that we do and vice versa.
Thank you.
Of course. So I know that I am on time, and I hopefully planted some seeds and some questions for you to consider. I want to invite you to link in with me. My LinkedIn is there. I've put my business cards here on the end of the stage. But if you're interested, volunteer, sponsor, member, and you want to follow up with me on a one-on-one basis, leave your card here. Write that word on. I'm interested in fundraising. I'm interested in membership. I'm interested in whatever it is you're interested in. And I'll follow up with you in the next couple weeks so that we can continue to advance mindfulness worldwide. Thank you so much for being here. Make it a great day.